Story 1. Winter has always been my favorite time of year. There's something magical and serene about gentle snowfall and holidays that puts me in a good mood from December through February. The downside. I live in northern Minnesota, where winters bring extreme cold and heavy snowstorms capable of dumping several feet of powder overnight. Treacherous driving conditions, to say the least. For the past 3 years, I've worked part-time as a DoorDash delivery driver to earn some extra cash. Balancing that side gig with my regular 9-to-5 marketing job is already tricky. Add blizzards into the mix, and the job becomes a real ordeal. I've lost count of the white-knuckle nights inching through unplowed roads and whiteout conditions to drop off some Big Mac combo meal. Most sane people would choose to stay home when winter storm advisories warn of an impending snow apocalypse. But I've learned there are unexpected perks to braving the elements. With significantly fewer drivers on the roads, I have my pick of high-paying delivery offers and tend to get way better tips overall. People empathize that you're risking life and limb bringing them their late-night munchies. So when another fierce Arctic front descended on us in mid-December, swirling grey skies thickening with heavy flakes, I knew what time it was. Time to rack up those blizzard bucks. After clocking out from the office around 7 p.m., I fired up the Dash app and hit the semi-deserted streets. Within a couple hours, able to cherry-pick the most lucrative orders, I had already pulled down over $100. The problem was, conditions deteriorated rapidly into the night. By 10 p.m., howling gales of wind kicked up drifts, obscuring all but a few feet of visibility ahead. My trusty ADD sedan with snow tires struggled mightily for any semblance of control or traction on the steadily accumulating powder. Common sense said it was time to call it a night. But that siren song of record earnings overrode reason. Just 1 or 2 more deliveries couldn't hurt, right? As I cautiously accelerated through another intersection, undeterred spinning wheels finally broke free, sending my hatchback fishtailing wildly. Overcorrecting the slide, tires lost contact with the slick, slippery surface. And gravity took over from there. The vehicle drifted sideways down the shallow embankment before plunging into a thick, powdery trench nearly up to the windows. I was completely, undeniably stuck. Adrenaline still coursing, I switched on hazard lights before dialing roadside assistance with a shaking hand. The call center rep promised a tow truck in 15 to 20 minutes, which seemed like a small eternity to wait alone in the dark, blustery elements. I just had to stay calm and focused. I told myself on repeat. Nothing to worry about, everything's fine. Over the next few minutes, red and orange beacons at first appeared as a distant flicker, reflecting off the heavy, swirling flakes. Then those approaching lights rapidly intensified, resolving into the unmistakable shape of a work truck pulling onto the shoulder behind me. This response time is incredible, I remember thinking. No way they could have arrived so swiftly. As that vehicle's engine cut out, a figure emerged from the driver's side door and began crunching towards my maroon hatchback with hefty steps. My window rolled down a few timid inches in anticipation. "Hi sir, did you need some assistance here?" The gruff, accented voice cracked. A pithy explanation of my predicament seemed unnecessary, but I obliged anyhow. "Yeah, I called a few minutes ago, just trying to get back on the road." "Right," he muttered with a curt nod, lumbering around to inspect the vehicle's undercarriage. While I'd never experienced a roadside rescue myself before, I presumed he'd retrieved some kind of winch assembly and carriage system to literally drag my car out this trench. His extended silence, broken only by husky grunts, sent a trickle of unease down my spine. Without warning, a violent gust of frigid air flooded the once cozy cabin as my trunk popped open. The man rummaged inside for several moments, then slammed it shut just as abruptly. "Sorry about that," his voice betrayed not even a flicker of remorse. Now, I'm no car expert, but I really couldn't fathom why he would need to access my personal storage area to assist with this situation. Connecting the dots, suspicion coiled cold and heavy in my gut. I discreetly reopened my phone to redial the previous number, praying it would still connect me to roadside assistance. Instead of ending the first call like I probably should have, I just kept it open on my lap hoping the operators might overhear something to validate my instinctual alarm bells. "All right, sir, I'm going to need you to exit the vehicle momentarily while I prep the equipment," he instructed, voice lowering into a register just shy of menacing. "Keys as well? Appreciate it." I stammered some dubious reply about needing another moment, averting eye contact to obscure the tremble rising in my throat. Thankfully, slight crunching of snow signaled his temporary retreat. I rapidly rolled up the window, locked the doors, and hunched low in my seat. The man's expression twisted from stony blankness into a scowl of pure fury. Viciously wrenching at the handle in futility, he punctuated each attempt with barbaric shouts. All this prior pretense of professionalism dissolved into naked primal aggression. I shuddered as another silhouette joined his side, no doubt retrieving implement of forcible entry. Just as they were poised to bash through the window, a deafening horn blast obliterated the unfolding nightmare. Twin beams of light washed over my car as the XT2 tow truck materialized, emergency flashes blaring. The erstwhile rescuers beat a hasty retreat and peeled out with a squeal of burning rubber. Two burly mechanics clad in heavy-duty jackets, one clutching what was definitely not a tire iron, jogged over to check on my well-being. Apparently, I had reflexively kept that 911 line open during the altercation, allowing the operators to overhear and dispatch immediate backup. For that unwitting impulse, I was eternally grateful. Over subsequent discussions with police, the grim reality of what could have transpired without intervention became all too clear. Operating under the guise of honest service professionals, these predatory fiends scarred the worst conditions for stranded motorists to exploit. If I hadn't trusted my instincts and fought back in those perilous moments, who knows where I'd be now? Like hardened criminals poetically committed to their modus operandi, this roving gang brought new meaning to the term ambush predators. Adapting seamlessly to the unpredictable yet cyclical patterns of nature, they engineered chaotic circumstances to sow the seeds of opportunity, then effortlessly extracted their pound of flesh from terrified, immobilized victims. Their reign of terror spanning back many seasons, the trail of assault snowballed until I inadvertently catalyzed their undoing. Without concrete proof or evidence, their schemes might have persisted under the radar for years. But you can bet I'll always heed those internal alarm bells now. And I'll never take another delivery when the winds scream out a warning. Story 2. Growing up, our family trips to go ice fishing up north were the highlight of every winter. My parents had some friends who owned a cluster of cozy cabins nestled deep in the frozen Minnesota wilderness, a remote sanctuary perfect for hunkering down and embracing the elements. There was a gas station a mile down the deserted road, but after that, civilization virtually vanished. Just pristine nature sprawling across the crystalline lake and snowy forest for miles. Even as a kid, I loved that feeling of solitude and adventure those treks fostered. Waking up at the crack of dawn, while it was still pitch black out, bundling up in insulating layers and hitting the ice at first light in search of legendary walleye and northern pike. Mom preferred cozying up by the fire with cocoa and mystery novels, but Dad and I embraced the harsh conditions enthusiastically. Tip-ups, jigging rods, pop-up ice shacks. We had the full angler's arsenal rigged and ready. This particular January, when I was around 12, our annual tradition started off familiar enough. Steady snowfall shadowed the already treacherous 8-hour journey, but I was too preoccupied with visions of record-breaking lunkers to care. It was late afternoon when we finally pulled into the driveway of our usual cabin, thankful to have outrun that blizzard churning behind us. Using the electronic key code, I led the charge in grabbing our gear and provisions to get settled. But something was amiss the moment I crossed the threshold. Entering the mudroom, I couldn't help but notice a curious spattering of slush and melted snow outlining a trail of footprints, leading directly to the bedroom I typically claimed for my own. Calling out to Dad, I pointed to the disconcerting frozen impressions stamped into the hardwood. He examined them curiously but shrugged it off, suggesting they were likely remnants from cleaning staff who periodically inspected the vacant properties. Still, I couldn't ignore that uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach as I made my way to unpack. drawing back the corner bedroom's curtains. I once again detected a blatant set of prints zigzagging across the fresh powder, blanketing the yard. The erratic path woven from the forest's edge, carved right up to my window, then careened back into the shadowed tree line. There was no mistaking those were made by human feet, not some scavenging critter. Dad was less convinced this time when I presented my unnerving discovery. While he agreed to inspect things more thoroughly, the intensifying storm and rapidly dwindling light deterred any hasty search party beyond our shelter's perimeter. As hours passed and darkness consumed the vast expanse outside, my skeptical parents even started to share my sense of dread. After a hearty dinner of canned spaghetti and meatballs, I prepared for my first restless night in the ominous cabin. Perhaps exhaustion would mercifully override my harrowing thoughts and suspicions, but the incessant thumping just outside my frosted window pane negated any chance of slumber. Slow, steady, methodical, the muffled knocking reverberated through the wall, then silence, then more pounding, on and off for what felt like an eternity. Finally building the nerve to face this nightly visitor head-on, I crept to peek beyond the veil of ice crystals. Nothing but darker shadows dancing on darker shadow in the relentless Arctic flurries. Chalk it up to an overactive imagination, I told myself. Just cabin sounds intermingling with the wind. Forcing that uneasy mantra on repeat got me through the remainder of this disquieting first night. When I recounted the strange noises in the morning, Dad's previously whimsical skepticism had drained away. Now he examined our surroundings with laser focus during the light of day. Sure enough, plodding footprints encircled our property once again, with the most recent evidence of approach and retreat traced right past my window. This conclusive proof of an uninvited guest seemed to raise more alarming questions than any logical answers. Who would be roaming these sub-zero wilds in such blatant proximity of our temporary residence? What were their motives if they knew we were occupying the cabin? And perhaps most chilling of all, how long had they been watching, lurking, waiting? Unwilling to take any chances, Dad reached out to his cabin-owning friends to share the bizarre details. They responded adamantly. We wouldn't be staying another night alone in that cabin without reinforced security. Within a couple hours, this nature sanctuary had been transformed into a veritable fortress. Motion-activated cameras provided real-time visibility both inside and out. The heavy wooden entry door added an imposing steel barrier with keypad access. We meticulously inspected every window latch, every shadowed corner, every nook and cranny. Hopefully, whatever had been sneaking around would be thoroughly deterred by our defensive countermeasures. With an added sense of safety, we'd finished out the weekend fishing excursion with Dad's friends, camped for backup at a neighboring cabin. I was on perpetual camera duty, inspecting the feeds at regular intervals for any sign of disturbance. But nothing materialized on those grainy, low-res screens except tranquil snowbanks enveloping the property, along with the occasional curious fox prowling in the distance. As for the human trace evidence, all clues instantly vanished beneath accumulating layers of new powder. There would be no following that unsettling trail to its source, not this time. By the last morning of our stay, it was as if our stalker had never existed in the first place. Of course, Mom vehemently refused to stay the final night, so we packed up and prepared for the long drive home. Farewells were exchanged, hushed discussions held behind closed doors between Dad and his friends regarding cabin security and the best ways to conceal this startling event from public awareness. For their esteemed guests' safety, they'd spare no expense to determine exactly what disturbed forces lurked this desolate domain. We never did uncover the mystery human responsible for those ominous tracks in the snow. Upon each future visit, apprehension crept into my bones like the biting chill of Arctic wind before we even crossed the threshold. Always looking over my shoulder, scrutinizing every flickering shadow for signs of sentient movement. Did our unseen observer still wander the peripheral woodline, patiently awaiting our return? To this day, a vestigial shudder still jolts my spine each winter as snow steadily accumulates and the world muffles beneath its opaque mantle. For who truly knows what predatory entities find refuge in nature's remote recesses, forever guarding secrets colder, more ancient, and far more unnatural than mortal consciousness, can comprehend. Story 3. When my Uncle Marcus offered me the chance to house sit while he and his family vacationed in Europe for a few weeks, I jumped at the opportunity. Living alone, even temporarily, was thrilling for an 18-year-old like me. But it soon became clear there was more to this remote mountain home than met the eye. Uncle Marcus gave very specific instructions about the house rules. No friends over, he said sternly. Keep outdoor activities near the house to a minimum due to deep snow accumulation. I thought his precautions were overly cautious, bordering on paranoid, but I promised to follow them. After ensuring I had plenty of food and emergency contacts, he bid me farewell and headed off to meet Aunt Cynthia and Cousin Brittany, who had flown ahead. Those first couple days were blissful, exploring every nook of the cavernous cabin, reveling in the peacefulness of solitude with no parents dictating my every move. Late one night, however, I was jolted awake by a loud thump from somewhere nearby. Heart pounding, I searched my shadowy surroundings to locate the source of commotion. Finding no obvious culprits, I peered out my bedroom window into the ominous darkness. Not only was a blizzard raging, but fresh footprints approached the front porch and vanished around the corner leading to my room. In the morning, I showed Uncle Marcus the disturbing tracks taking through knee-high snow drifts from the forest to my window. He shrugged it off as some critter or melting icicles, but I remained unnerved. Later that night, the eerie thumps resumed, slow, heavy, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Steeling my frayed nerves, I ventured downstairs to investigate. Upon reaching the entryway, the pounding grew louder, seeming to emanate from just beyond the front door. Barely breathing, I glanced through the peephole to reveal nothing but silent darkness. Tentatively opening the door a sliver, I was greeted by icy wind and newly outlined footsteps aiming back towards the trees. Whatever or whoever had been lurking here was no longer visible. Slammed the door, layered on extra locks, and phoned the authorities. Though they found no signs of foul play, lingering dread clenched my gut like a vice. Through the bare branches swaying the frigid gusts, I detected movement. A small figure approaching from the woods and making a beeline for the house. As it drew nearer, I realized with horror it was a child. No more than 10 years old in only a threadbare sweatshirt, wandering alone in this perilous storm. After desperately relaying the bizarre situation to the 911 dispatcher, I was soon greeted by local deputies patrolling to secure the property. As shocked as I was to find this pathetic, shivering child standing expectantly outside my uncle's house in the middle of nowhere, my concern evaporated upon studying his vacant eyes up close. Detached and glazed over as if sleepwalking, he uttered zero reaction to being physically carried inside from the elements. All standard questions. What's your name? Where are your parents? Went unanswered. The boy kept staring straight ahead in catatonic silence, no matter how gently and insistently the officers prodded for information. As if sealed in a dissociative trance completely removed from external stimuli. Like a living corpse regressing into itself. In the days that followed, no missing persons reports matched this unclaimed youth. Uncle Marcus's house, the same one I'd been trusted to inhabit, was apparently the mysterious residence our somnambulant guest kept referencing. That claim alone raised a plethora of disturbing implications. After weeks of exhaustive investigation with zero leads, Child Protective Services took temporary custody of the nameless boy as the search for his real identity continued. I yearned to relay my unsettling encounters, but felt silly dredging up seemingly innocuous details from that eerie night as crucial evidence. By the time Uncle Marcus and his family returned from their European excursion, those haunting nights felt more like fever dreams than actual events. That's when the second bizarre incident occurred. Not even a month had passed before another missing child was found sitting expressionless, unharmed yet completely detached, directly outside my uncle's cabin door. Though he swore it was pure chance, certain puzzle pieces started to coalesce in my frenzied psyche. Why did Uncle Marcus insist on zero outdoor activities or visitors at his isolated property? Why had he delayed returning home for several days after my aunt and cousin's departure? So many perplexing inconsistencies and lingering questions. Did this scenic mountainous refuge conceal more devious circumstances than anyone cared to comprehend? While the authorities inspected every inch of my uncle's property, he seemed almost unnaturally nonchalant, allowing unrestricted access without the slightest hint of incrimination. Still, the fact these disturbed children kept materializing right on his doorsteps seemed too eerie to be mere coincidence. For months following, a nagging sense of doubt gnawed at my subconscious. Had my uncle used me as a temporary buffer, capitalizing on my young naivete to provide a relatively benign occupant, while his own troubles remained concealed? Did his extended family realize the type of horrors he managed to suppress just below the picturesque surface? I wanted desperately to purge those harrowing memories and suspicions from my awareness, but each gruesome news story, each new unexplained disappearance within our remote neck of the woods, hammered them deeper into my restless psyche. I don't know what other elusive skeletons still rattle from Uncle Marcus's tightly sealed closets, but I know the echoes of a secret malevolence will continue reverberating through those deceptively tranquil hills and valleys ad infinitum.